everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, we get to go to Maryland, and instead of the other East Coast place that doesn't belong in the Big Ten, instead of bagels, we get to eat crab cakes. I'm kind of looking forward to it. Should be a fun trip. Do you like crab cakes?
I've had it maybe like once before. Have you ever had salmon patties?
Yes.
Are they kind of like that? If I recall, like, I don't know, maybe not ish.
I strongly prefer crab to salmon. Strongly. So.
I like breadcrumbs and salt and pepper. So, do they put those in crab cakes?
There are probably breadcrumbs and stuff in there. There's some sort of filler that there's something that makes it a cake and not just crab. So, and it's not like sprinkles. So don't get too excited about that.
Okay. All right, that's fine. Yeah, I am looking forward to it. I always enjoy the trip to Maryland. It's, I like the stadium. It's a different kind of stadium, and it is a little bit of an odd stadium. The county fair kid in me kind of likes their stadium because it's like a concourse. There's like a midway almost. No games or anything, but it's just, it's different. It's small. It's nice to walk around, and you can get, like, at this joint, you can get some barbecue. At this place over here, you can get something on a stick. It's like I said, it's like a fair.
Yeah, it's not quite a Big Ten stadium. It's almost like it's, I don't know, like an ACC stadium maybe, like kind of like that, and conveniently located in ACC country too. So,
yes, very, very inconveniently located. But Tom, as we preview this Maryland Ohio State game, if you look back at the past scores of these games since Maryland has joined the Big Ten, and they've played 7 times in the history of the two schools. All 7 have been in the Big Ten. The lowest point total was in 2015 when Ohio State scored 49. The Buckeyes are averaging 59 points per game in a series, winning by an average of 59-21, and that is factoring in the 51 points that Maryland scored in 2018, which Thursday, the 4-year anniversary of that game, by the way. But this is, 66 points last year, 73 in 2019, 52 before that, 62. I think what I'm trying to say, Tom, is don't make Ryan Day mad in recruiting or with the Chase Young, any kind of accusations there. Don't get on his bad side, and you won't have to worry about Ohio State averaging 70 points per game against you.
Yeah, this is a really fun series because everyone thinks of the last time Ohio State was there, it's like, oh, wow, Maryland has given Ohio State a run. It was like, yeah, well, that was the one time. And then there's been a lot of 62-3 in the other games. It's been Rutgers with more seafood, basically, the last couple of years. It's like Old Bay Rutgers, essentially. The whole rest of the series. And, I would certainly not want to, speculate on any reasons why Ryan Day might have some sort of grievance against Mike Locksley in the Maryland program, but they have not been shy about putting up points on Maryland in the past, and, the famous Chris Olave onside kick came against Maryland, so, if you want to assign some sort of motive behind that, you are certainly welcome to do so, but, I do wonder this weekend, will this be a keep the pedal down game in the way it has been in the past, or will this be a get a lead in the third quarter and get everyone the heck out of there and start the clock on Michigan week with as many healthy bodies as you can manage?
Yeah, because when you look at the game last year, that was October 9th. The one in 2019 was November 9th. It was the time they had to score all of the points against Wisconsin or against Maryland 4 years ago, where they threw up a bunch of points, and they weren't trying to get out of town because they had to finish winning the game, and so they scored 52 there. If you go back to 2016, they played on November 12th and scored 62. It feels like November 19th would have been too early for the Michigan game, so I'm going to assume that was a 26 then as well. But if you take that 52-51 game out and you just look at the last 4, Ohio State is winning 66-12 over the last 4 meetings without that 52-51 in there. So I think Ohio State, and I have not turned my pick in yet, but I think Ohio State could approach that average because, as we know, and we have to get to it here, Tom, the weather's looking pretty decent.
The weather is looking good. I kind of nervously checked the weather earlier this week and went, oh, good. I don't have to bring all my rain gear because it was, it is just a big smiling sun face and like no wind. It's going to be, chilly. It'll be in the 40s, but, low to mid 40s and sunny and no wind. This time of year is just, you might as well have, money raining down from the sky. If that's the forecast, like great, fantastic. Like you're not going to get 70 and sunny in late November, but 40 and sunny and no wind, perfect. After the last 2 weeks, man, sign me up.
Well, I mean, I'm able to withstand those kinds of conditions. So,
you can't expect 70 and no wind and no precipitation anywhere outside of the press box. There, it's going to be 72 and perfect. Maybe a little dry, Tony. You may want to put some like lotion on your hands or something just to, to stay in peak physical condition. But yeah, I mean, outside of where Tony gets to live, yes, it should be a little chillier, but also nice.
Well, and if they do open the windows, I will bring a shawl. So I will have that, put that on my lap, maybe one for my shoulders, and just go from there and just deal with it and then work. You go and you just keep going. The Maryland Terrapins have not kept going the last couple of weeks. Road games at Wisconsin and at Penn State. Wisconsin 23-10, Penn State 30-0, and this has been a completely different Maryland team than the one we saw the first month of the season. The team that lost to Michigan 34-27, and this kind of gave the game away a couple of times in that one. They certainly helped Michigan win that one. They have not put up a fight in either of the last 2 weeks. Talia Tungavailoa missed a game. I think maybe the Northwestern game, came back for the last two. Is certainly thoughts that maybe he's not been fully healthy, but when you watch him, he's not the calm, cool, collected guy that we saw in the past. And I don't know, Tom, how do you prepare for a team that has, it's Jekyll and Hyde basically? And I don't know that either of those options are like the scary version.
Well, Maryland isn't a team that goes back and forth from week to week. And 1 week they're, incredible 1995 Nebraska, and then the next week they're 2022 UMass. You get September Maryland, which sometimes lasts to like early to mid-October Maryland. And then you get end of season Maryland. And it's just every single year they start out and it's like, oh, they beat Texas 2 years in a row. How about that? Wow, this Maryland program's really turning a corner. And then they lose 66-7 to Ohio State, again in November. Maryland, the first half of the year, they beat a decent Buffalo team. They clobbered Charlotte, who's terrible. They beat SMU, who's okay. Close game against Michigan, lost by 7. Beat Michigan State by a couple touchdowns. Played a very competitive game against Purdue, lost by 2, and that, sir, that is Big Ten West possible favorite Purdue at this point. And then you hit the midpoint of the season. That's the first 6 games of the season. All right, there's first half Maryland, second half Maryland, squeaked by Indiana, 38-33, squeaked by Northwestern, 31-24, lost by 2 touchdowns at Wisconsin, lost by 30 at Penn State. That's what happens. And this is a team that just doesn't have. They have. Like, the frontline talent is there, and then once you sort of start getting through the frontline talent, once some of those stars start getting banged up a little bit, there just isn't the depth there to sustain it throughout the year, and they just sort of always fall apart in sort of the same way every single year. They'll look really good in the non-conference schedule, and they get into Big Ten play, and it's like, oops, Talia Tungavailoa threw 5 interceptions against Iowa this weekend. Oops, they scored 0 points against Penn State. Maybe they forgot that they were supposed to score points. Who's to say? That's just what Maryland does. And this time of year, this tends to be Maryland is in the, maybe if things break right, they can make the Pinstripe Bowl kind of mode. And they know that Ohio State is not a game they're probably going to win. So how much, I think they still have Rutgers left the last week, and they need one more win for bowl eligibility. So, I don't think they're going to be throwing the kitchen sink at Ohio State this Saturday, because they're going to want to do that against Rutgers to try and get to 6 wins in a bowl.
Throw the kitchen sink at Rutgers. Boy, oh boy, how far we have fallen. It is interesting, though, and right now Maryland is sitting at 6-4 with the 3 wins in the non-conference.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, I missed one. Sorry.
But if you look at those wins, like Indiana, they beat Indiana 38-33. They beat Northwestern 31-24. Like they're giving up points to teams that can't really score. And then the bizarre thing, they gave up 13 yards rushing to Purdue and allowed 31 points. They gave up 36 yards rushing to Indiana and allowed 33 points. If Ohio State rushes for, 50 yards, is that 50 points? I mean, how are they giving up? And I'd have to go, obviously we'd have to go and look at the box scores, but that's an awful lot of points for very few rushing yards. And now in those games, Purdue threw for 360 and Indiana threw for 315, which isn't abnormal for those two programs. But man, once you get some balanced attack, this is why I feel like Ohio State can name their offensive score at least.
Yeah, and this is a Maryland team that you go through their games this year, and so many of them are right in this same range. They beat SMU 34-27. They lost to Michigan 34-27. They beat Michigan State 27-13. They lost to Purdue 31-29. They beat Indiana 38-33. They beat Northwestern 31-24. It's just like all these games are just kind of like, there's not a super explosive offense. There's not a super lockdown defense, but it's not terrible either on either side of the ball. And that's kind of borne out by their SP Plus rankings. They're 41st in the country in SP Plus, which is like, you're a slightly below average Power 5 team, essentially, if you're there. And they are 44th in offense and 50th in defense. So it's just like the most just kind of, they're like the mid-card jobbers in every element of the game of Power 5 teams. It's like they're not the worst. They're not like notably bad, but they're not even average in anything. They're just kind of like, well, they're there and they're okay at everything, but not really good at anything. And yeah, that's the kind of team that Ohio State just kind of like, well, how would you, choose your own adventure, Ryan Day. How would you like to beat Maryland by 30 points today?
Now, Tom, you use the word jobber. The correct terminology is enhancement talent nowadays. Okay, so please, enough with the disparaging wrestling jargon. The last 3 weeks, Maryland's defense has allowed 215 yards rushing to Northwestern, 278 to Wisconsin, 249 to Penn State. This is a bad time to run up against an Ohio State offense that the running game has picked up. But as I look at this and I see they gave up 164 yards to Penn State being the best passing team that Michigan has played this year, as we referenced Michigan, and just keep that in mind if Penn State and Sean Clifford is the best quarterback you've faced all season long, well, maybe you can throw Talia Tagovailoa in there, but just file that one away. But right now, looking what this Maryland defense is doing compared to what the Ohio State offense is capable of, yeah, I'm still formulating a plan, but I might stick with my with a 59-point effort for Ohio State. With the Maryland offense, Tom, I've got some numbers for you, and just so you know, Talia Tagovailoa, okay, he has thrown for on average like 303 yards per game at home. He is one of only 3 Big Ten quarterbacks in the past 25 years to average more than 300 yards passing at home with a minimum of 10 games. Joining whom?
In the last 20 years?
25 years with a minimum of 10 games. And 10 games, I assume they mean starts, but.
Okay, in one season, I'm going to say, if it's not just 10 home games, if it's I'm going to say Dwayne games. Haskins did. Oh, right. Okay. So Dwayne Haskins would not qualify because he only played one season. All right. I will say C.J. Stroud.
That is correct.
And there's one other.
Mm-hmm.
I will say 25 years would encompass Drew Brees, wouldn't it? So I'm going to say Drew Brees.
That is correct, Tom. The 2 greatest passers in Big Ten history over the last 25 years, and also history.
I would like to announce my retirement from the Buckeye Weekly Tony Gerdeman blindsides me with the quiz business. And also, Tony, I have 2 words for you. Furl-Mengus.
Mengus, yes. Perfect. Perfect. That's still one of my favorite moments of all time. Anyway, so you've got Talia, and he's not been good the past couple of weeks and has been panicking. Like Penn State, over the last 4 weeks, Northwestern sacked the quarterback 4 times. Wisconsin got him 5 times, and then Penn State last week got him 7 times, and he's been running for his life, and he's probably already like in some pain and is trying to end up in less pain. But in the loss to Wisconsin, which was 2 weeks ago, he was 10 of 23 passing for 77 yards. Against Penn State, he was 11 for 22. Like he's below 50% in the last 2 weeks. With the way Ohio State is getting after the quarterback right now and throwing in these different blitzes with the safeties, I expect him to throw for more than 77 yards, but I would not expect him to look all that great this week because he has not been great since maybe Indiana, if you want to count 270 yards at 64% completions, 2 touchdowns. It's been a while since he's looked good, and he hasn't looked good since he's come back. I don't think this is the week where it's like, this week gets me good.
Yeah, Ohio State doesn't tend to be a get-right game for many teams in the Big Ten, and I'm going to guess that streak will continue this week for Maryland. What's fascinating about them is you look at Tagovailoa's passing numbers, and it's like, well, that's not great. I mean, he's 68%, which is fine, 2,152 passing yards, 14 touchdowns, 6 picks. And you look at his receivers, and it's just a bunch of guys. All these guys have played, the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys have all played in all 10 games, and they're all averaging, 6 of the 8 are averaging between 23 and 40 yards per game. It's just the leading receiver is Raheem Jarrett, and he has 40.6 yards per game. Averaging 11 yards per catch, 3 touchdowns. He was like a 5-star or borderline 5-star guy, depending on who you asked. Like, he was supposed to be the next Stephon Diggs. And he's like just a dude. He's just, how many Ohio State wide receivers are averaging more than 40 yards per game this year? 3? All 3, right? The 3 leading ones. So, yeah, I mean, it is like a very, very unimpressive, just kind of, it's fine. Like, it's balanced. The positive way to say that, Tony, is it's balanced. You never know where it's going to go because everyone's going to catch 2 passes and they're going to get 35 yards each. And, I mean, it's fine, but there's not a lot of explosiveness there. And then you look at the run game, and the run game is, like, it's fine. They're averaging 4.4 yards per carry, which is not a disaster, but it's also not great. And it's like, okay, well, they can't really run, and they can't really pass. How are they moving the ball against Ohio State again?
Well, as you're describing the receivers, it sounded like you were talking about Michigan's receivers a little bit there, Tom, where it's spread out to a bunch of different guys, and there's no really one guy that you go to, and there's not a lot of explosion. Throughout their careers individually, like Ja'Shawn Jones had some explosive moments as a freshman, like back in 2018, and then he missed a year, and he's never quite been the same guy. Dante Demas had so much promise. I think he was like a second-team All-Big Ten preseason selection the last 2 years, and he's not really done anything. 14 catches for 153 yards. But all of these guys have the ability. It's just the consistency has been an issue, and I don't know if it's lack of snaps, lack of targets, what it is, but yeah, I think it's this rotation has kept them from anybody really exceeding everybody else other than Raheem Jarrett in the slot, and he's obviously dangerous, and that'll be a good matchup for Tanner McAllister and maybe Cameron Martinez at some point. Cameron Martinez got to play quite a bit last week against Indiana. It's these guys are all going to be meaningless if Talia Tagovailoa has no time to throw, and he's just going to be throwing it out of bounds, up for grabs, all over the place. I did see one clip of him this week saying he has to get rid of the ball earlier, which to me, getting rid of the ball earlier means some quick passes out wide where there's going to be some tackles for loss if you crash on that stuff. So they might have to do some restraints and some constraints with that. But we've seen this Ohio State team do pretty well against screen passes to the receivers, and that would seem to be something that Jim Knowles is going to be looking for since, gosh, you said it on TV.
Well, also, that seems like something that would not be a bad thing for them to work on, because Michigan does a lot of that kind of stuff. Michigan does not do a lot of downfield passing. So if you can, if you're going to be able to take that away, that's a little live fire exercise on Saturday before you have to do it for real against Michigan. So that's a positive thing. It's just, you look at Maryland's offense, and there's Roman Hemby, and he's the running back, and he's, 81 and a half yards a game and averaging 6.1 yards per carry, 7 touchdowns. Like, okay, that's good. And Antoine Littleton, he had a long of 68 and 6 touchdowns, and okay, 5.3 yards per carry. And it's just, okay, how long is that going to work if you can't throw the ball? I think is my concern for Maryland. I don't think this strikes me as a team that's going to be able to move the ball consistently in Ohio State and keep the chains moving. And if you keep putting the Ohio State offense out on the field with a just okay defense, it feels like you're asking to get 50 points scored on you. I was all ready to pick this game as about a 41-10 kind of game, and the more we're talking about it and the more I'm thinking about it, it feels, the only thing that would keep them from getting to 50 or 60 is if you're pulling CJ Stroud in the middle of the third quarter, which they might do. That is a real possibility this week because, again, you got Michigan on deck. The dumbest possible thing would be you get CJ Stroud hurt, you get someone called for targeting, something like that in the second half of the game, and then they miss the first half of the Michigan game. It feels like you're going to want to get up, get out, and be on to Michigan as early in that game as you possibly can.
But I also think they can have 56 points and get CJ Stroud out early in the third, like at some point in the third.
Yeah,
or at least finish with 56.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Roman Hemby, the running back. These are a couple of numbers that surprised me. So he's a redshirt freshman. He is second among all FBS freshmen in yards from scrimmage. He's got 886 yards rushing, 240 receiving, trailing only Ole Miss true freshman running back Quinshawn Judkins. So that's pretty good company. Also, Hemby is one of just 2 FBS players averaging 6 yards per carry and 9 yards per reception, along with another SEC running back. Tom, would you like to guess which running back that is who used to play at an ACC school before transferring?
I was gonna go with Jahmyr Gibbs, and now I'm even more confident that it's Jahmyr Gibbs, unless you're being extremely mean and tricking me with something. But yeah, it feels like the answer is Jahmyr Gibbs.
It is, and I should have done something trickier. But I mean, that's pretty good company to be in with those guys. But then you look at Roman Hemby from week to week, and last week 16 or 13 for 68. He's really turned it on the last 4 weeks with 107 against Indiana, 179 against Northwestern. And then his carries drop, and he's averaging 66 against Wisconsin, 68 against Penn State. But he's a guy that is heavily involved in the offense. The offense just needs to be on the field more. And if they can't throw it, then good luck running it. But I'm interested to see all of the different things that the defense does this week or doesn't do, as they are just, are you as, although Tom, this is a week where you could throw stuff out there that you have no intention of using against Michigan. Offensively, defensively, special teams. This is the week. Like, get it out of the house. And maybe we see something. I don't know if we see, probably wouldn't even be able to recognize it defensively, pretty much, because it would just be part of something that you'd have to be watching the film to get. Offensively, they could be doing some things, and maybe we should have thrown some of that into the bold prediction. One bold prediction for something that is just for Michigan, and it's like, reverse pass, the receiver throws a pass. Although, Tom, that is I believe, my 10-pointer for the season long, or 5-pointer for the season long. So maybe that will happen. But anything that they can do for Michigan this week, they should do, I think.
Yeah, it feels like this whole game is about 2 things. 1, getting out with a win, and 2, being as prepared for Michigan and setting yourself up for success against Michigan as much as you possibly can. And that comes in terms of health, like we talked about earlier, and that comes in terms of, like Tony said, putting stuff on film. Although, to me, if you're putting something on film, you put something new on film this week, and it's, whatever. You've got Travion Henderson and Dallin Hayden in the backfield together, or you've got Marvin Harrison in a Wildcat package. Whatever you want to say it is. if you're putting it on film this week, that tells me you're not using it next week. Like it's almost like a double bluff where, you put Marvin Harrison and the Wildcat and they're going to be like, well, you're not going to do that against us, obviously, because you just put that on film. And then you do it again against them and then mind blown. Honestly, like anything you put on film this week, it really is just kind of, you're just screwing with Michigan, I feel like, in almost all cases. And if you're breaking tendencies, you'll hear from Ross Fulton about this on the Friday episode of Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning. He talks about the fact that, sometimes you'll put stuff on film. Sometimes you'll break tendencies just so you can go back to maintaining your tendencies before. So sometimes you build up your tendencies so that you can break them against Michigan. Sometimes you break them so you can go back to doing them against Michigan. So that's a possibility. So, are they going to throw more out of the pistol than they typically do? This, because they did that some last week. You may see stuff like that. That might be a good example of something you're going to see rather than, hey, look, Jesse Mirko's the quarterback now.
Ooh, yeah. Well, and anything they do like that, they have to put time into themselves. Like Ohio State has to waste the time to do that. And so they don't like to necessarily waste time, but it's always fun to watch just the wrinkles before the wrinkles, before the game to see what, and we'll have to watch, will Michigan do anything? Like, will they complete passes downfield? I mean, that would be a complete shock, and Ohio State would have to recalibrate what they're going to do if Michigan is actually able to complete passes downfield. So, Tom, let's do our game picks. And as I think of this, there's a very convenient score that I can use because, as I said, since the inception of the Big Ten with Maryland in it, Ohio State is winning by an average score of 59-21. But 21 feels like an awful lot of points to give to Maryland, this Maryland offense right now. 59 feels like a decent, good number, but I keep coming back to that Michigan thing, and I don't know how many points are going to be scored after the fourth quarter, and this is just going to be a very quick fourth quarter. I think Maryland's going to want to get out of it as much as Ohio State does. So I will say 52-10 Ohio State.
So you were saying 59-21 earlier, and I had already made a bold prediction that they were going to score less than 12 points. So I was going to pick Maryland to score 10. And I'm like, well, 59 sounds high, but 52 sounds about right. So instead of sharing a score prediction, which is just going to, the last thing in the world I want to do is validate Tony, so I'm just not going to share a score prediction this week. Instead, I will point out that on the Maryland official team stats this year, Maryland's time of possession is 29:45 per game, and their opponent's time of possession is 29:57 per game. So 18 seconds is just gone every game. 18 seconds, just lost time. Now, I would say you've lost a lot more than 18 seconds if you've been watching Maryland football all year. But, if you have, is that... did they have a game shortened by weather this year? Did they have... I don't remember that happening. I looked at that and it was like, I've literally never seen that before, that the time of possession for team and opponents do not add up to exactly 60 minutes. So
now I feel like one of us, not me, is going to have to go through each of those box scores to figure out where the math is wrong. But, and being at Ohio State and covering Ohio State like we are, we don't see mistakes made by SIDs because there are none. At Maryland, maybe this is just a simple adding error by the department or subtraction error, but I'm not going to throw any shade their way because they allowed us to come to the game this week. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to getting to Maryland. Looking forward to perhaps partaking in a giant pretzel covered in crab meat. So, it's a good time to be there. It's a fun place to watch. It's just another part of the country, and looking forward to getting there. So that will do it for us as Tom unboldly unpredicts a score for the second time this year. I'm not going to hold it against him, but I want to thank you all for joining us. As always, please find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member, say hello to us there at the message board. Check out all of the recruiting information, and boy, there's some recruiting stuff going on right now for the Buckeyes. Also, you can find us at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Go ahead and subscribe there if you haven't. Hit the bell to get notified. Hit the thumbs up on this video and all of the other videos that you watch on our channel. So thank you all very much for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later.